As Brigham Young said, there would come a day when the evidence for the Book of Mormon would be so overwhelming that people would. He was afraid that people would stop, believing in it on faith, just because there was so much evidence that it was true. Well, that day has not been here until now.
Now, this one blows my mind. So, go to the video I did called Anachronisms in the Book of Mormon. Why anachronisms in the Book of Mormon? I described why. So those are things that are out of place at the time of the Book of Mormon anyway. There, and I talk about why some of those may still be considered anachronisms, but we're finding so many now, it's stunning. The one I do in the video was back to the 1840s, a list that we've now found, but I want to show you a crazy one that's really blown out, and this was just in the Fair Mormon Conference in 2019. Matt Roper did this. So if you look at the page right here, and I've got 2 pages of it. So this first one, the category, and this is just to 1966. So as of 1966, look on the top left. These are the categories relating to anachronisms related to ancient warfare, metals, animals, Lehi's wilderness journey, and Israelite culture status. Look on the right, and as of 2019, green means we found it. It's confirmed. Blue means it's trending, and red still unconfirmed. Okay, you can pause the screen if you want to digest it. Crazy. Look at the next page. This is the category of ancient records, writing, names, 3rd Nephi, and ancient cultural language. Again, 1966 versus 2019. This is just unbelievable in my opinion. Okay, now let's roll it all up. Take a look at this. Here's the summary. This is the slide he flashed in his presentation at the Fair Mormon Conference. So, out of 205 on all those, 141 confirmed, 26 trending, so 167 total, 38 unconfirmed. So percentage-wise, 81%, 70% confirmed, 81% confirmed or trending. Only 19% remain unconfirmed. This is just, since 1966. And then it's interesting. There's often a double standard that Christians will condemn Book of Mormon archaeology, not realizing the same applies to biblical archaeology in a lot of ways. And so listen to this biblical archaeologist. He says, in the field of history, whether it be the patriarchs or David or anyone else, we are repeatedly told that no extra biblical occurrences of this or that individual have been found. So their historicity is to be dismissed or treated as doubtful, regardless of all other indications. No such wrong criterion is applied elsewhere. Why here? Absence of evidence is not and should not be confounded with evidence of absence. So I love that. In fact, if you go watch the video I did on Old Testament issues that unnecessarily challenge faith, there's some of that in there. Okay. Now, with regard to some of these anachronisms, I love what Tad Collister shared in his book. He said, to some extent, these critics unwittingly do Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon a great service. Every time they accuse Joseph of an anachronism, such as metal plates, cement, or barley, they strengthen Joseph's prophetic claim. Why? Because in their dogged certainty that they know the real truth as supported by science, only later to be proven wrong, they have heightened the probability that Joseph could not have known the real truth except through divine means. The fact is that very few of the known archaeological sites in ancient America have been excavated. George Stewart, a leading scholar of the Maya who worked for National Geographic for almost 40 years, did an interview in 2001 on National Geographic Live. In the course of his interview, he made the following revealing comment: we hardly know anything really about the Maya. There's almost 6,000 archaeological sites, and we've dug 40 of them. This is less than 1%. Other non-Latter-day Saint archaeologists have confirmed these estimates of minimal work done on ancient American sites. Evan Bartlett wrote, less than 1% of Mesoamerica has been professionally surveyed. And then another one says, what percentage of Maya sites have been excavated? Of all the Maya sites that we know to exist, we've excavated less than 1% of them. The sites themselves that we've done excavation at, we've excavated less than 10% of those sites. So of all the remains we could possibly excavate, we're at 10% of 1%, or in other words, 1/10 of 1%. So, which, by the way, is why that LiDAR thing is crazy amazing, because it's a way to lift. They went down there, I think, because it was the most extraordinary place of hidden, because of the jungles of Guatemala that have grown up over all these things, and you can't really even get to these places. It's so difficult. And now all of a sudden they're able to x-ray what's underneath that jungle canopy, and they're freaking out. They're comparing these civilizations to ancient Egypt, ancient China, 15 to 20 million people, highly civilized. It's crazy.
National Geographic made a big historic discovery in Central America in 2018 by using LiDAR technology. Immense cities, road networks, and many other structural features were brought into view by this technology. It's as if they got a copy of the Book of Mormon and were quoting passages directly out of the Book of Mormon itself. We will now hear from Jeff Roundy to explain more.
So this video in the Evidences series is going to talk about LiDAR, which is laser imaging detection and ranging. And it's recently been deployed in a fascinating area of the world down in northern Guatemala. And there was a program that National Geographic ran on February 6, 2018. It was called The Lost Treasure of the Mayan Snake Kings. And had the teaser for this show, it said, "See how LiDAR is revolutionizing archaeology and rewriting history." This went viral in many different media outlets. The National Geographic story was billed as, or entitled as, "Exclusive. Laser scans reveal Maya megalopolis below Guatemalan jungle." The BBC said, "Sprawling Maya network discovered under Guatemalan jungle." The Washington Post said, "Maya civilization was much vaster than known. Thousands of newly discovered structures reveal." NPR said, "Game changer. Maya cities unearthed in Guatemala forests using lasers." The New York Times said, "Lasers reveal a Maya civilization so dense it blew experts' minds." Fox said, "Mysterious lost Maya cities discovered in Guatemalan jungle." So it's a pretty exciting program. I highly suggest go and watch it online. I'll put it in the resources section. I'm going to use some resources from Book of Mormon Resources blog that did a great job in pulling together a lot of scriptural ties from the Book of Mormon. So now, respected archaeologists, because of this, are actually comparing the Maya to the ancient Chinese and the ancient Egyptians. The way that LiDAR works is it's expensive equipment that flies over in a grid-like pattern over these jungle areas, and they send billions of laser beams down, and it penetrates through the jungle canopy, and it bounces off the structures, and it forms this massive amount of data. So it's a huge data cloud, and now with supercomputers and graphic processing, they can create these 3D map images. So much of this, LiDAR's been around for a while, but much of this technology is now integrated with it to be able to do these things. They've picked this specific area as a fantastic place to apply the technology. In fact, they've talked about LiDAR to archaeology as like the Hubble telescope is to astronomy. And this specific area, in fact, it's fascinating when you watch the program because they'll show you these, just as far as the eye can see, jungle. And then they show you what it looks like underneath there from the LiDAR detection systems. And they've discovered these vast, massive cities underneath. So this specific area was a great target because many areas of the world have been urbanized or have had modern farms, things that have destroyed much of the archaeology that was there. This area, with the Mayan collapse, really was preserved as the jungles took over essentially and hid and protected a lot of the structures underneath these jungles. Now this specific study was done over an area of about 2,100 square kilometers, and they're going to continue going until they do about 5,000 square kilometers, which will only be about 1.4% of the Mayan area in Mesoamerica. The Mayan area is about the size of Montana, roughly. So it's going to take decades really to study a lot of these things, but big picture items are starting to emerge, and archaeologists have started talking a lot about these different things. And so pulling all these resources together, I mentioned before, I put together 6 major categories that would be really fun to look at, what the archaeologists have said or in the program that was on National Geographic, and then specific references to the Book of Mormon. And as I mentioned, there's some great resources on the Book of Mormon Resources blog on this topic. So first of all, highly advanced civilization. Maya civilizations, so in yellow on the screen, this is what the archaeologists have said. Underneath it are scripture quotes from the Book of Mormon. So Maya civilization, much more dense, complex, and advanced than previously thought. Jeremiah 1:8 says the people multiplied exceedingly, spread upon the face of the land, became exceedingly rich, employed fine workmanship, built buildings and machinery, worked metals, made tools of every kind, and crafted weapons of war. Helaman 3:14 and 15 adds that they built ships, temples, synagogues, and sanctuaries, and authored many books and many records of every kind. Okay, another archaeologist, we have always known that the Maya were the most advanced civilization in the ancient Americas. Now we know that they were one of the most advanced in all the ancient world. The Lord promised Jared and his brother that their seed in the New World would become, quote, a great nation, and that there would be, quote, none greater upon all the face of the earth. Ether 143. Okay, the next category is massive population size. So archaeologists said Maya lowland population at the apex could have reached 15 to 20 million. That's why they're considering it one of the greatest civilizations possibly now in the history of the world. Mormon 1:7 says the people in the land southward were as numerous almost as it were the sand of the sea. Archaeology said land use was intensive, nearing 100% in many areas. Mormon 1 says the whole face of the land had become covered with buildings. Tikal was 3 or 4 times larger than we thought. Previous population estimates were 60,000 at apex. That number should now be 250,000 or more. El Palomar was 40 times larger than we realized. The Maya created vast urban sprawl. In many places, the Book of Mormon text mentions large populations, numerous people, Mosiah 24:3. So many people, 3 Nephi 5:8. Okay, archaeologists, estimates of population in the Maya area at apex have been revised upward to about 20 million. This was half the population of Europe at the time, even though the Maya occupied only 1/30th as much land area as Europe. Mormon described the Lamanites as numerous hosts in Alma 51:27. 65,000 previously unknown structures just in this 2,100 square kilometer area that they started with. Mosiah 27:6 speaks of large cities and villages in all quarters of the land. Okay, next category, road networks. Archaeologists said vast networks of highways elevated. Notice the word elevated. So they function even in the rainy season. This one really blew my mind. 3 Nephi 6:8 terminology is many highways cast up and many roads made. Next, archaeologists. Maya cities were more interconnected with transportation infrastructure than anyone realized. 3 Nephi 6:8 describes many highways cast up, many roads made, which led from city to city, from land to land, and from place to place. Then the next, we used to think of Maya cities as isolated. They were not isolated. Networks of roads and highways connected them over vast distances. One is reminded of the roads and highways mentioned in 3 Nephi 8:13. Okay, next category. Large-scale agriculture. Food production was at an industrial scale. Helaman 6:12 mentions raising grain in abundance, many flocks and herds, and many fatlings. Agricultural production was on the astonishing scale, with many wetlands drained and turned into irrigation fields. Helaman 12:2 explicitly mentions agriculture as prospering in the increase of their fields. Public works, including dikes, dams, canals, ditches, and reservoirs. In some cases, Maya engineers rerouted natural stream flows. Mormon, in describing the Nephite Golden Age in the land southward, mentions widespread engineering and construction works. Alma 50:12, which includes ditches. Alma 49:22. Agricultural terraces with irrigation systems. Alma 17:26 and 27 describes a designated Lamanite place of water. Animal pens. Alma 1:29 says the Nephites had an abundance of flocks and herds and fatlings of every kind. Okay, next category, prevalent warfare. So ubiquitous fortresses, ramparts, and defensive walls. Alma 49:13 mentions forces of security for every city and all the land round about. Alma 49:18 emphasizes the highness of the bank, which had been thrown up, and the depth of the ditch, which had been dug round about. Mormon 50:4-6 calls Captain Moroni's fortifications, towers, and strongholds. Alma 52:6 describes Teancum preparing defenses by casting up walls round about and preparing places of resort. Endemic warfare over centuries was the norm. Mormon 8, Moroni 400 AD said the Lamanites are at war one with another, and the whole face of the land is one continual round of murder and bloodshed, and no one knoweth the end of the war. Warfare was particularly prevalent in the early classic 250 to 500. And if you know the ending of the Book of Mormon, Moroni wrote that their wars are exceedingly fierce among themselves. In the last, there were much more war among the Maya than we have ever supposed. Defensive structures and fortifications were everywhere. Tikal had a large fortress protecting it. The Nephites strengthened so many cities, all of which are strongly fortified after the manner of the fortifications of Moroni. Alma 51:27. And the last category was disaster-prone landscapes. Archaeologists said many people lived on marginal swampy lands. Helaman 11:20 uses the terminology waste places. 4 Nephi 1:9 speaks of cities sunk in water. There was an earthwork wall surrounding Tikal 5 meters high and 16 kilometers long. Archaeologists have begun calling it the Great Wall of Tikal. The Book of Mormon describes a strong wall of timbers and earth to an exceeding height in Alma 53:4, encircling Bountiful with similar earthworks surrounding Gid, Alma 55:25 and 26. And last, stone quarries, Alma 48:8, lists banks of earth and walls of stone as structural components. I know that was a lot of stuff, very quickly. Hopefully you found that very fascinating and very interesting. Subscribe for more videos. Now let's talk about Book of Mormon geography. So this is, my heart is having palpitations a little bit on doing this video. In one sense, is there's I think a lot of contention right now on different geographical models there, and fighting over these different spots. And I'm thinking, I don't want to be offensive to anyone that has a strong opinion one way or the other. I'm actually going to show a way that maybe both could be right, even in a sense. And in fact, look at this statement. So the church actually issued a statement in January of 2019 on Book of Mormon geography. Look at what's underlined here. Some believe that the history occurred in North America, while others believe that it occurred in Central America or South America. Although church members continue to discuss such theories today, the church's only position is that the evidence of the Book of Mormon describes took place in the ancient Americas. The prophet Joseph Smith himself accepted what he felt was evidence of Book of Mormon civilizations in both North America and Central America. And the saints really thought of North and South America. That was where everything happened. And the Book of Mormon peoples were all the peoples that existed in those lands. Now, when Moroni used the term "this continent" to Joseph, in talking about things in Joseph's day, it meant North and South America. In fact, it wasn't until 1904 in our dictionaries and things that they really have it as North and South America as kind of separate continents in a sense. I also want to show you a couple of quick quotes. Harold B. Lee said, "Well, if the Lord wanted us to know where it was, or where Zarahemla was, he'd have given us latitude and longitude, don't you think?" I love that. Wilford Woodruff, "This land, North and South America, is the land of Zion. It is a choice land, the land that was given by promise." And cool. And Orson Hyde talking about no kings on the land and how he interpreted that. And he says this land means both North and South America. Okay, now tying this together, I wanted to share a really cool way to say, you know what, these both actually could be right in a sense. And I'm going to highly recommend, just listen to this. Go to, whichever model you lean towards, watch this presentation the Fair Mormon Conference by Mark Wright, and there's a write-up that I'll link in the interpreter from this Mesoamerican scholar, Mark Wright, archaeologist, Heartland as Hinterland. And look at the summary, the abstract. The best available evidence for the Book of Mormon continues to support a limited Mesoamerican model. However, Alma 63 indicates that there was a massive northward migration in the mid-1st century BC. I argue that these northbound immigrants spread out over the centuries and established settlements that were geographically distanced from the core Nephite area, far beyond the scope of the text of the Book of Mormon. I introduce the hinterland hypothesis and argue that it can harmonize the Mesoamerican evidence for the Book of Mormon with Joseph Smith's statements concerning Nephite and Lamanite material culture in North America. Archaeological and anthropological evidence is used to demonstrate that migrations and cultural influence did in fact spread northward from Mesoamerica into North America in pre-Columbian time. But look at down where it says the point is that Alma 63 describes an era of northward movement and migration sometime in the mid-1st century BC away from the Nephite core area and thus outside the scope of Nephite history. My argument is that these Nephite migrants continue to expand northward throughout the centuries, often due to Lamanite pressure from the south. I believe that every statement made by Joseph Smith or his contemporaries concerning Nephites or Lamanites in North America can be accommodated by this, he calls it the hinterland hypothesis.